Take a listen.
One of the incredible things that comes with being an athlete is perseverance. And that's why I encourage all young people to participate in sports, because it teaches you how to overcome turbulence, but also deal with success and failure and criticism and overcoming injury. And I just want to applaud Lily for 150 years of trying to make sure we're healthy, but also an athlete like Caitlyn, for example, who's not only a terrific player, but she's also been a great ambassador just for the game.
Jaylen Rose just said what a lot of people in basketball have been thinking but haven't been willing to say publicly. And the fact that it's coming from him matters. This isn't some random commentator trying to ride the Caitlyn Clark wave for clicks. This is a Fab Five legend, former NBA player, someone who's been around elite basketball his entire life. When he talks about witnessing greatness, he knows what he's looking at. But here's what makes this interesting. He's not just praising her skill, he's praising her as an ambassador for the game. And if you've been paying attention to the WNBA media landscape over the past year, you know that's become a controversial statement. Because there's a segment of people who don't want to give Caitlyn Clark credit for anything beyond her statistics. They want to minimize her impact, downplay her influence, and pretend like the league's explosion in popularity has nothing to do with her.
And as somebody that went to Michigan, when y'all look at those old highlights of her shooting from the logo, that was the Michigan logo she was shooting on. So I was very familiar with her and her game for a really long time, and how she battled back from her injury. Same with Darren Peterson. He was in and out of a couple of games this year, and the ability for an athlete to make those sacrifices and have that discipline to overcome whatever injury, aches, and pains that they have and still perform is incredible.
That Michigan logo detail is perfect, because it shows he's been watching her for years, not just jumping on the bandwagon after she turned pro. He saw her in college, torching his alma mater from distances that shouldn't be possible, and he recognized then what we're all seeing now. This isn't hype, this isn't manufactured star power. This is legitimate generational talent. And notice how he connects her basketball excellence to her character. The perseverance, the discipline, the ability to overcome injury and criticism, because that's been Caitlyn Clark's rookie season in a nutshell. She didn't just deal with the normal adjustment period that every rookie faces. She dealt with a level of targeting, physical abuse, and hostile treatment that we haven't seen directed at a star player in modern WNBA history.
Let's be real, the girl has been nothing but targeted her first 2 years in the league. You know, she got everybody paid, and, you know, people are acting like it's because of other reasons, all types of nonsense, man. Caitlyn Clark has done nothing short of saving this league. Okay, putting this league on her back. We saw the ratings drop by more than 50% without her. And she went through a hellacious year with the injuries, being targeted, coaching debacles, putting her at small forward, got the center bringing the ball up the court, teammates taking off-season deals, running off on the bag, secret behind the secret handshake deals with Stephanie White. The whole DeWanna Bonner situation, Natasha Howard wants to win MVP. We got Bree Turner and her act. That's just too much.
Let's talk about what he's referring to when he mentions the injuries and the tumultuous season. Because this wasn't just normal wear and tear from an 82-game schedule. Caitlyn Clark spent her rookie year getting hip-checked into scorers' tables, getting clotheslined on fast breaks, and absorbing flagrant fouls that would have resulted in suspensions if they'd happened to any other player. The Chennedy Carter body check in June became the most visible example, but it wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern. Dejounte Carrington's eye poke that left Clark with a scratched cornea. Angel Reese's repeated hard fouls that the league refused to review. The constant physical punishment that somehow never resulted in adequate consequences for the players delivering it. And through all of that, she still put up Rookie of the Year numbers. She still broke the single-season assist record with 337 assists. She still led the league in three-point field goals made with 122. She still averaged 19.2 points per game while dealing with defensive schemes specifically designed to neutralize her. That's what Jaylen Rose is recognizing. Not just the talent, but the mental fortitude to perform at an elite level while being treated like a target.
It was a lot. It was a lot. And she has prevailed, and she is back better than ever and ready to go on a run for the WNBA MVP, okay? Make no mistake about that, man. Shout out to Jalen Rose recognizing the greatness of the great Caitlyn Clark. Now, we have to get into some Sophie Cunningham news and situations, okay? Because obviously the expansion draft went down and Sophie Cunningham was not taken in the expansion draft, okay? So she will be hitting the market as an unrestricted free agent, okay? Now, ultimately, there's a lot of things at play. What is going to happen with Kelsey Mitchell? Will she be willing to accept a core deal for a max contract? Or will she be like, hey, I'm getting offered a multi-year max contract elsewhere. I need to leave and get paid. That is
But here's where it gets complicated. Because while Jaylen Rose is publicly praising Caitlyn Clark's impact on the game, there's a whole ecosystem of WNBA media personalities and former players who are doing the opposite. They're downplaying her influence, crediting the league's ratings surge to everything except her, and pushing narratives that minimize her role in the WNBA's financial windfall. The numbers don't lie. When Caitlyn Clark played, the WNBA averaged 1.32 million viewers per game. When she didn't play, that number dropped to 394,000. That's a 54% decline. The Indiana Fever went from averaging 2.3 million viewers per game during the regular season to their playoff games without her drawing under a million. The league's attendance increased by 48% overall, but Fever home games saw a 278% increase. Those aren't marginal improvements. That's not natural growth. That's the Caitlyn Clark effect. And yet there are people within the WNBA ecosystem who refuse to acknowledge it. They want to credit the CBA, the expansion teams, the collective talent in the league. Anything except the truth, which is that one player fundamentally changed the financial trajectory of this league.
Is also major because she was one of the few people we saw actually bite down and take action. And she wasn't going for the nonsense. She was willing to fight. She was willing to brawl. She didn't give a damn. She stood up for Caitlyn Clark, and we loved her for it and treated her as royalty because of such, okay? Now let's get into this article here, courtesy of Sports Illustrated and Robin Lundberg. Here it says, Sophie Cunningham remains key question for Fever after WNBA expansion draft. Here it says, the Indiana Fever still have a decision to make on Sophie Cunningham following the WNBA expansion draft.
And this is where the coaching situation becomes relevant. Because Caitlyn Clark didn't just have to deal with opposing players trying to injure her. She had to deal with her own coaching staff misusing her talent. Christy Sides, who was fired after the season ended, spent months playing Clark at small forward. Let that sink in. The best point guard prospect to enter the WNBA in a generation, a player who broke the NCAA all-time scoring record while running the offense, was being asked to play off the ball. There were games where Erica Wheeler was bringing the ball up the court while Caitlyn Clark stood in the corner. There were possessions where Kelsey Mitchell was handling primary ball handling duties while the league's assist leader was being used as a spot-up shooter. It was basketball malpractice, and it cost the Fever wins. But here's what makes it even more frustrating. While this was happening, while Clark was being misused and physically targeted, her teammates were negotiating secret deals behind her back. Kelsey Mitchell and Stephanie White reportedly had conversations about White becoming the head coach before Sides was even fired. Nalissa Smith was working on off-season arrangements while the team was still in playoff contention. The Dewana Bonner situation in the playoffs was particularly egregious. Here's a veteran player, brought in specifically to provide leadership and playoff experience, completely disappearing when it mattered most. And then you had Aaliyah Boston, who somehow convinced people she deserved MVP consideration, despite being outplayed by her rookie teammate in almost every statistical category.
Sophie Cunningham won't be headed to the Toronto Tempo or Portland Fire via the WNBA expansion draft, which means the Indiana Fever still face a looming decision about her future. It was always unlikely Cunningham would be taken by either a new franchise, given each could only take one unrestricted free agent who they would then in turn be able to offer a supermax deal to. While Cunningham is a versatile contributor, a draw off the court, she isn't quite on that tier as an individual player. And I 100% agree with this. I think Sophie Cunningham is an awesome role player, but she's not in the upper echelon.
So when Jalen Rose talks about perseverance and overcoming turbulence, he's not exaggerating. Caitlyn Clark's rookie season was a masterclass in dealing with adversity from every possible angle. Opponents trying to hurt her, coaches misusing her, teammates prioritizing their own interests, media personalities diminishing her accomplishments. And through all of it, she maintained her composure and elevated her game. Now let's shift to the Sophie Cunningham situation, because this connects directly to everything we've been discussing. Cunningham became one of the most beloved players in Indiana specifically because she was willing to do what a lot of Caitlyn Clark's teammates weren't. She stood up for her. She fought back against the physical targeting. She didn't care about the politics or the optics. When someone came after Clark, Cunningham responded. The expansion draft results confirmed what most people expected. Sophie Cunningham wasn't selected by Toronto or Portland, which means she's now an unrestricted free agent. And that creates a fascinating decision for the Indiana Fever. Do they prioritize bringing her back, even if it means paying above market value? Or do they let her walk and hope they can find someone else who brings that same defensive intensity and willingness to protect their franchise player? According to the Sports Illustrated report by Robin Lundberg, the Fever protected 5 players in the expansion draft, and Cunningham likely wasn't one of them. That doesn't mean they don't value her. It means they made a calculated bet that neither Toronto nor Portland would use one of their limited unrestricted free agent selections on a role player, even one as valuable as Cunningham. And they were right. But now comes the hard part. Kelsey Mitchell is going to command a supermax contract, assuming she's willing to accept a core designation and stay in Indiana. Aaliyah Boston is now max eligible under the new CBA. Caitlyn Clark's rookie scale salary jumps significantly in year 2. Lexi Hall is a restricted free agent who the Fever will almost certainly match any offer sheet on. That's a lot of money committed to 4 players, which means there might not be much room left for Cunningham. Here's what makes this decision so critical. Sophie Cunningham isn't just a three-point shooter who plays physical defense. She's a culture piece. She represents the mentality that the Fever desperately needed last season and will need even more going forward. Because if Caitlyn Clark is going to continue carrying this franchise, she needs teammates who are willing to have her back when things get physical. Think about the contrast between how Cunningham responded to the targeting versus how some of Clark's other teammates responded. When Chennedy Carter delivered that blindside hip check in June, Cunningham immediately got in Carter's face. She didn't care that it might result in a technical foul or a fine. She wasn't worried about how it would look on social media. She saw her teammate get cheap-shotted, and she responded accordingly. Compare that to some of the other reactions from Fever players throughout the season. The lack of support, the passive body language, the unwillingness to escalate when opponents were taking liberties. That's why Cunningham became so beloved by Fever fans. She filled a void that shouldn't have existed in the first place. Now, from a pure basketball perspective, is Sophie Cunningham worth a max contract? Absolutely not. She's a role player who shot 35.4% from 3 last season and averaged 7.8 points per game. Those are solid numbers for a complementary piece, but they're not max-level production. The question is whether her intangible value, her willingness to protect Caitlyn Clark and set a physical tone, justifies paying her more than her statistical production would normally command. And here's where the business side gets interesting. Because Sophie Cunningham's star power has absolutely increased by playing alongside Caitlyn Clark. Her social media following has grown, her jersey sales have increased. She's become a recognizable figure in women's basketball in a way that she wasn't during her years in Phoenix. That has value both to her and to the Fever organization. So if the Fever offer her, let's say $150,000 per year, and another team offers her $180,000, does she take the extra money? Or does she recognize that staying in Indiana, playing alongside the most marketable player in women's basketball, might be worth more in the long run through endorsements and exposure? That's the calculation she has to make. The Sports Illustrated article suggests that if things are anywhere close to equal financially, Cunningham would be inclined to stay, and I think that's probably accurate. She fits in basketball-wise. The increased attention that comes with playing in Indiana benefits her brand. And there's something to be said for being part of a team that's building toward championship contention rather than starting over with an expansion franchise. But the Fever can't just assume she'll take a discount. They need to make her a real offer, one that reflects her value to the organization beyond just her box score statistics. Because if they lowball her and she walks, they're going to have a very hard time replacing what she brings. Finding a 3-and-D wing who can shoot from deep and play physical defense is hard enough. Finding one who's actually willing to fight for your franchise player, that's almost impossible. The timeline is compressed too. Free agency moves fast in the WNBA, and with 80% of the league hitting the market this offseason, teams are going to be making decisions quickly. The Fever can't afford to wait and see what happens with other dominoes. They need to prioritize their key pieces, and Cunningham should absolutely be on that list. So here's what I think happens. The Fever bring back Kelsey Mitchell on a core designation with a supermax salary. They match any offer sheet for Lexi Hull. They give Aaliyah Boston her max-eligible contract. And then they allocate whatever remaining cap space they have toward retaining Sophie Cunningham and adding one or two more pieces around the edges. That's the smart play. That's how you build around Caitlyn Clark while maintaining the defensive identity and physical presence that made them competitive last season. Because at the end of the day, this all comes back to Caitlyn Clark. Everything the Fever do this offseason should be evaluated through the lens of maximizing her talent and protecting her on the court. And Sophie Cunningham is a big part of that equation. She's proven she's willing to stand up for Clark when opponents cross the line. She's proven she can knock down open threes when Clark creates for her. She's proven she fits the culture that Stephanie White is trying to build. Let her walk, and you're sending a message to the rest of the roster. You're saying that loyalty and toughness don't matter as much as raw production. You're saying that protecting your franchise player isn't a priority. And that's a message the Fever cannot afford to send, not after everything Caitlyn Clark went through last season. So yeah, pay Sophie Cunningham, bring her back, make her feel valued, and then go find a few more players with that same mentality. Because if the Fever are going to compete for championships, they need more than just talent. They need players who are willing to fight, and Cunningham has proven she's one of them. Don't let her get away.